Actually, you are the first one in a long time who has pronounced my name correctly. So I'm very, very glad about that. Well, I don't want to spend a lot of time, maybe just to do one or two things while I'm standing here. Firstly, to acknowledge and give a word of appreciation. Firstly, to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Ponga, as already said, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Gender. I've been around a little bit in different fora with Dr. Ponga. She's a great champion for this issue, gender, and a person you want to have in the room where ideas are flowing. So I really look forward to inputs this morning. Dr. Tserebwe Ngandwe, who is also on the panel, well, he's a great personality, but he has had the misfortune of introducing me to economics. He was my lecturer in first year economics, and I keep joking with him that all the errors I've made concerning my profession are as a result of him. So thank you very much, Dr. Ngandwe. Of course, acknowledge the Vice President for ZAC, Ms. Sylvia Mwana, the Zanamaka President, Mr. Kamea, and our moderator, of course. EAZ, our great partners. We have done a lot of things together. It's good to see that we are continuing with this great partnership. IPA, Innovation for Policy Action, our partners as well. But lastly, and not the least, just to acknowledge Professor Nava Ashraf, who is here this morning. Professor Nava Ashraf is our lead academic as the International Growth Center. She's based at the London School of Economics, where she's professor of economics. Before that, she was at the Harvard Business School, but she's been working on Zambia for about 15 years, I think. So she has gathered quite a great stock of knowledge about Zambia and issues around sustainable development, issues about gender. So if you want to know more about IGC, please, you're free to get one of these brochures. It will briefly tell you about the International Growth Center. One of the things it would do is to tell you the areas in which we are focused. 4 of them: state effectiveness or capability, which is about government coming up with the right policies. And we are there to work with government, produce evidence around which policies are shaped. We are also in the area of urbanization. Cities, very, very important to sustainable development. Energy is another issue that we are working in. For a long time, of course, we did nothing about energy, but when we had the energy crisis about 3 years ago, it became very clear that this was a very important area for us, and we have since jumped in. It will also tell you about industrialization and what we are doing in the area of industrialization. One or two things which the brochure is not going to comment on is the fact that we are promoting what we may refer to as frontier research. We want to have research which is informing global conversation in the area of sustainable growth, sustainable development. But we also want this research to have very strong, very clear footprint in the local situations, and in this case, in Zambia. So this research must be feeding into policy. And as a result of that, we work very closely with government, and we are represented in a number of government fora. And basically, we want to hear what the concerns for government are. And we want to make ourselves available to gather evidence for policy making. So, of course, again, I'm just promoting myself. Dr. Ponga is here. That yeah, we are available for you. Please feel free to contact us when you have questions. We come around and shape those questions together and look around for good researchers like Professor Ashraf. We will fly her in and she will shape those questions in a way that works for us. Well, the other thing is we also want to build, to contribute to building capacity in research. I don't know how many of you are students. So we were there. We want to work with you to provide some kind of mentorship so that we get top class researchers coming from Zambia. Well, having said that, just to comment very briefly about the topic today, very important, I know, to government, to Dr. Ponga and others, very important to ourselves. I mean, I was looking at the topic, women, institutions, and entrepreneurship. Now, each of those three words are loaded and very, very important, very, very topical. So this is a great gathering, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot from the presentations, the panel discussions, as well as from each other. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Dr. Chiwele. It's an exciting topic, as Dr. Chiwele has said. As a woman and an entrepreneur, it hasn't been a very easy journey the past 2 years for myself when I entered into entrepreneurship. So I'm looking forward to hear what the government, through Dr. Ponga, has in terms of policies, and also what the research results are in terms of women entrepreneurship and institutions, as the topic says. So thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Chiwele. Next, I'll call upon Dr. Luvinda Habazoka. I want to pronounce that correctly. Dr. Luvinda Habazoka from the Economics Association of Zambia. Dr. Habazoka, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mine is very simple. It's just to show gratitude to everybody that has come. So I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Gender, Dr. Auxilia B. Ponga. I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of my colleagues from the Economics Association of Zambia, headed by Ms. Miriam Nachima, our Executive Director. I would also like to acknowledge the head of IGC, the country manager, Dr. Chiwele, a partner that we have done a lot of things together. We are both partners in crime and partners in success. And that success is what you are seeing today. I would like to acknowledge the presence of our keynote speaker from the London School of Economics, a very prestigious university, whom I actually signed an MOU with 2 months ago, as I'm also the director of the Graduate School of Business of the University of Zambia. That is Professor Nava Ashraf. I would like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues from the University of Zambia, and that is Dr. Ngandwe, Economics Department. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of colleagues from the Zambia National Marketeers Credit Association and thank them for the good job that they are doing. I think I also like to acknowledge the presence of everybody that has come here to discuss this very important topic. You know, women, entrepreneurship, and institutions move together. For those of us that do research, and especially research that has been funded by the World Bank, you are going to know that when you are doing an empowerment initiative or intervention, and they are making available resources to empower families, you are going to note that most of the conclusions that we normally make after making baseline studies, after coming up with various interventions, is that we pinpoint those households headed by females. And if, even though there's a male household head, the resources are normally channeled to the family for particular interventions through the female. The reason simply is that women are basically the caretakers of us men. And through time, we have seen that there has been discrimination against women to as late as the late mid-1900s or the 20th century. In some even European countries, women could not vote. And in the olden days, women could not even occupy very big positions. Women were not, in some countries, women up to now are not even allowed to drive. Women are not allowed to get a job. So when we are talking about gender equality and the goals of the United Nations to ensure there's gender equality, I think it's very important that in a country such as Zambia, with its non-African traditions, this topic comes out very prominent. And we understand as an association that for us to bring up equality, we just don't need to favor women to say, okay, we need to reserve this position for a woman. I think the most important thing is to build capacity and to provide a level playing ground for both the boy child and the girl child so that in life they're able to compete favorably and get the desired jobs or whatever, to give them a chance to do whatever they want to do. And when you are looking at institutions, there's need to strengthen institutions to ensure that they do not discriminate, and where a certain cultural discrimination has been observed that might disadvantage the girl child, institutions are strengthened to ensure that incentives are put across to level the playing ground. In terms of entrepreneurship, as I've already said, when a man gets a salary in a household, the first thing that us men do is to provide a budget for food. And because we do not trust ourselves, we are going to give a certain portion of our incomes to the wives. So if we need to bring up that development in this country, that is going to be sustainable, that is going to move people out of poverty, there is need to encourage entrepreneurships among women. Now, the most important thing is that we are supposed to understand the challenges that women are facing in the country in terms of entrepreneurship. Some of them might even be stigma. You find, sorry to mention this, but this reality, you are going to find a situation whereby when a woman outperforms men in society, all sorts of accusations will be pointed at that particular person. So I think as an association, as citizens, we need to understand that discrimination does not just come in terms of providing that opportunity. It also comes in terms of victimization and all sorts of things that happen in society. Me not being an expert in this particular field, allow me to end by saying that we are very happy that IGC has involved us in this very good discussion, and we very much appreciate the efforts from government that they are doing to ensure that there's gender equality, and there's, for that purpose, a specific ministry, the Ministry of Gender. Although I would have loved that ministry to also protect us men, because it's a trend that when we get paid and our wives get paid, our wife's salaries, our wife's money, but our salaries are everybody's salaries in the family. So through the PS, call upon government to intervene in this interesting situation, because household income belongs to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Havazoka. Yes, it's true. A man's income is our money, but my money is my money. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Havazoka. Our next speaker is the keynote speaker. Let me just read a brief about her so that you just get to know more about our keynote. Professor Nava Ashraf is a professor of economics at the London School of Business and London School of Economics and Political Science. She was previously a professor in the negotiations, organizations, and markets unit of Harvard Business School. She received a PhD in economics from Harvard University, which is one of my dream universities, so hopefully I can go there soon. Yeah. Her research combines psychology and economics, using both lab and field experiments to test insights from behavioral economics in the context of development projects in the Philippines, Kenya, and Zambia. She's been in Zambia for the past 15 years, so she's not new to the country. She's been studying in Zambia for the past 15 years. She has conducted research on questions of intra-household conflict and bargaining in decisions related to finance and fertility, with a special focus on women's empowerment. Her research is published on forthcoming and in leading journals, including American Economic Review, the Quarterly Journal of Economics, and the Journal of Economic Perspectives. She is a faculty affiliate of Jamal Poverty Action Lab at MIT, dedicated to the use of randomized trials as a tool of learning what works in international development, and a fellow of the National Bureau of Economic Research. Prior to joining Harvard, she worked at the World Bank on trade negotiations between Morocco and the European Union, EU, as a consultant for several non-profit organizations in developing countries, and as a founder of Business Skills Training Institute Women in West Africa. She's been awarded a Queen's Jubilee Medal for the service of government of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Professor Nava Ashraf.
Good morning. I am so honored to be here with all of you. Deeply honored to be here in the presence of the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Gender. Honored to be here with my fellow economists across the world and my Zambian economics researcher colleagues. Honored to be here among all of the people working on the ground as practitioners who know far more about this topic from their own experience than I could possibly tell you from the research we've done. But I'm still going to try to share with you a little bit of the research that we've been doing for the past few years that focuses around marketeers in all of the markets in Lusaka. As you've heard, I've been a great lover of Zambia, even though I was working all around the world. When I first arrived here in 2004, I decided to stop all my other projects and just focus on Zambia because I felt there was such amazing potential in this country and somewhere I wanted to be the kind of researcher that you could see over and over again and that was committed to one place. And so your feedback, your input is so incredibly important to me and to this research. I want you to know that this research is very much ongoing and everything that we learn today is going to be incorporated in the next round of the research. So please, please don't hold back in giving us your comments, your questions, your feedback, because it will become incorporated into the research. Let me start without further ado. Let me see if I can pull up the slides. Maybe I can ask for the help of someone to pull up the slides. Maybe I'll take the microphone. Great. So this research study was carried out in collaboration with our colleagues at the Innovations for Poverty Action, who are over there, sitting there. That our colleagues helped us to carry out on the ground. And with my co-authors, Alexia Delfino and Professor Ed Glazer. So, firms don't grow generally in developing countries. But interestingly, if you break it down by gender, female-led businesses have even more of this challenge. So they're even smaller and less profitable than men's. And entrepreneurship remains a male-dominated activity. And by entrepreneurship, as was said by Dr. Chiwele, each of these terms that we use in the paper are very loaded. So just take the term entrepreneurship, which one of our distinguished panelists had mentioned to me before. That's really, it's a very big term, and I think we call a lot of people entrepreneurs. And even within the entrepreneurship literature, there is a big debate about who do we call entrepreneurs? Is it the people who we think are true entrepreneurs, the ones who create transformative entrepreneurship, who innovate, who are able to grow and are driving the engine of growth in a country? Or is it just anyone who starts a business, right? For any reason, including for many subsistence reasons. And I think for the case of this paper, we're really calling everyone who starts a business an entrepreneur. Now, I'm not saying that's the way we should define entrepreneurship, but that's just what we're calling an entrepreneur here. And it's an interesting question of how anyone who starts a business can become the kind of transformative entrepreneur. But here I just want to cast a wide net. We think about entrepreneurship very broadly. And we won't focus in this paper on manufacturing as an industry. And there, 70% of manufacturers are men. Part of the reason we look at manufacturing is because this is obviously a sector which can drive growth in the country, is a very important sector, but across Africa is a very small sector of the economy, as everyone here knows. And it's a sector that has economies of scale. So the issues of collaboration and trust that are going to come out in this paper that are very important are particularly important in manufacturing in the sense that they have very strong economic implications. And yet here, very strongly, there is a gender differential. Now, one thing that's very interesting is that while manufacturing growth can be such an important driver of economic growth. The taking advantage of economies of scale can come through the process of urbanization. So what is very interesting about the rapid urbanization that's happened all around the world, and especially in Africa, and we're sitting here in I think, the second fastest growing city in Africa, possibly the fastest growing city in Africa, which is Lusaka, right, in terms of urbanization. Urbanization can bring an extraordinary amount of benefits because here you have a number of people going into very close quarters, being able to share ideas and innovation and grow together. But in order to take advantage of these extraordinary benefits of urbanization, that is, the kind of collaboration that can come out of people with new ideas coming in and collaborating together, you have to feel safe trading with each other. And so it's only when business partners can safely engage in economic transactions that as a country, people can benefit from the economic growth that can come out of rapid urbanization. So that's where a lot of this research paper comes, is how do you create this safe environment under which people can trade and create economic transactions. Given that a strong entrepreneurial sector is key for economic growth in developing countries, what we do in this paper is to document a strong and persistent gap between male and female-led businesses. I'm going to show you these gaps in earnings, in collaboration, in trust. And then I'm going to show you, as a preview, just how much the very things that we think might be driving the gaps are actually not driving the gaps. Not a difference in education, not a difference in hours worked. So then we'll explore what is this gap about? Why does it arise in our sample of manufacturing firms? And then we sort of uncover the vital role of legal institutions, in particular here of small claims court, which are really meant for the level of economic transactions that the level of firms in our sample are transacting under, and institutions such as market chiefs, local institutions that help to facilitate collaboration and growth among entrepreneurs. This is something that in the broad international literature is very strong, that we always talk about the importance of legal institutions for economic growth. But this paper tries to provide the micro-evidence behind it, in particular taking the local institutions in Lusaka, the small claims court and market chiefs, and relating them to economic transactions. And then in particular showing how these institutions can disproportionately benefit female-led enterprises and reduce the gap that we see in the overall sample. So that's what we do in this paper as a preview to show you. We show you micro-evidence on the gender gaps on trust and economic activity, and the way in which local institutions can play a mitigating role in reducing these gender gaps. And the way we do that is we first carry out this census that's geocoded with 48,000 firms. Basically, it's the whole universe of firms in Lusaka, and I'll show you some of the data from that. And we geocode and we add on all of the market structures including, you know, the Zona booths, the mobile money booths, et cetera, and the markets, as well as the institutions, so that we know where everything is placed in the whole city, how close the marketeers are to each other and how close everyone is to the institutions. Then, after the 48,000 firms that we surveyed, we do an in-depth manufacturing survey of more than 2,000 manufacturing firms. And we ask them very particular questions on entrepreneurial activity. Finally, and I'll show you some of the results on that and looking at the gender gaps in that. And then we measure and exogenously vary institutional quality of the market chiefs and the small claims court. And I'll tell you how we do that, because of course that's a very difficult thing to be able to get at. And right now we're actually exploring a lot of avenues for future field work, for survey work, for potential experiments. And that's where your ideas and your feedback will be incredibly helpful, because I'm sure there's many things that we haven't fully gotten that we would love to be able to have your feedback on, and we're really in the process right now of expanding this paper and really thinking about that. Okay, so first let me talk about the Lusaka Census of Urban Entrepreneurs. We started this because we felt that we needed to actually be able to really understand what's the landscape. You know, who are the people out there? What are their firm levels, et cetera? And that gives us a, you know, it's a very simple survey because we couldn't do 48,000 with a very complicated survey. So all we really have are the geocodes, the industry, and the size. And what we learned from that is that, you know, Lusaka businesses are typical of a city in sub-Saharan Africa, you know. And 90% have less than 10 employees. And again, this is kind of what we see elsewhere, where you have this, you have some very, very large firms, and you have these like very small firms, and up to 10 employees, and then you have this missing middle, which is in most developing countries, that's the case. And then we do this survey with manufacturing firms that have less than 20 employees. This is, you recognize Lusaka, and these are all of the points of the census, as well as the, I'll show you later where the small claims court is and the markets are. Okay, but what I'm going to focus on today is really the gender gaps. There's much to say about generally the entrepreneurs, but because of our limited time, I really want to focus our attention on something that we found really striking in the results. When we look at the small-scale manufacturing survey, you know, again, these are manufacturing firms that are fixed firms, but they're not necessarily registered. Okay, they're not necessarily formal, and they have less than 20 employees. And we interview the owners. Okay, in many cases, the owners are also the managers. Here's what we find. Women's businesses are smaller than men's. They cluster in less capital and trust intensive. You know, they cluster in manufacturing. What that means is that although there are some women actually who are making gates and making furniture, most of the women, as you might expect, are in the sectors within manufacturing that are, you might already think of it, the food manufacturing and tailoring. However, what's very important is that people often think that that's because that's what women learn at home, or that's what women want to do. We find that that's not necessarily the case. And interestingly, those are the sectors within manufacturing that actually require less capital to start and less trust to keep going, right? Because the other manufacturing sectors require a big fixed investment. And when someone gives you an order, you kind of have to trust them that they're going to be able to you know, finalize and give you the money for the rest of it. So in fact, they require the other sectors within manufacturing that men are dominating in, require more capital and more trust in others to be able to fulfill their contracts. And so I'm asking us now to see some of the things that we may have previously seen as just something driven by preferences of women or the backgrounds as women, of maybe coming from a different source. we find that the female-led businesses earn less than male-led ones. That's partly because that's not manufacturing. Within the manufacturing sector, tailoring and food make less money than other firms within manufacturing, other sectors within manufacturing. But even within those other sectors, even within each sector, women are making less money than men are. So it's not just driven by which sectors they go into. Female-led businesses cooperate less than men. They cooperate less. We ask about 4 areas that I'll talk about in cooperation in economic activity, which is joint bidding, buying from suppliers, sharing information. And women report doing much less of that than men do. And finally, women's businesses are more reliant on their partner's financial support in being able to run their business. So we're going to explore these gaps. I'll show you the graphs, and then we're going to discuss where they come from. Here's the first one. Women's firms are smaller than men's. That is from a number of different things that we study. So we look at how many business partners they have. And on the left is the graph. I don't know if you can see it. On the left is the graph, is the bar chart for men. On the right is women's. So you'll always see, I'm going to show you just many, many bar charts. And they will always have the men on the left and the women on the right, as just a simple way of showing the descriptive results from the survey. So men have more business partners. Men have more family members working in their business. Men have significantly more full-time employees. And men also have significantly more, much, much more part-time employees. Female entrepreneurs also, as we just talked about, cluster in less capital and trust intensive sectors. So as you can see, actually, almost the majority for both sectors is in apparel manufacturing, but women are far more in that. That's the blue segment of the pie chart. Women are far more in that than men are. Okay, the red is wood and metal manufacturing that men tend to be more in. And then the green is food manufacturing. Okay. Female-led businesses earn less than male-led ones. Now, as you all know, actually getting income levels and earnings and profits are actually quite difficult. Any economist in the room, any economics researcher knows that this is a very hard question to ask properly and to get accurate and precise data on. So we ask that in many ways. We ask about their average earnings. We ask about the full distribution of earnings in the last week, for example, and in the last month. And on every one of these measures, we find that women earn less. And here what you can see is on the left, you can see log sales in a good week. The female is the red and the blue is the male. Not to be gender stereotyped, but just for ease of absorption. And you can see that essentially in a good week, as well as in a bad week, log sales are just shifted to the left in terms of the entire distribution for women than for men. Okay. I'm just putting all of these facts out there, and now we're going to discuss, okay, what is this from? Now, why would it be that women-led businesses earn less than men? By the way, this is not just Zambia. This is all over the world. In fact, there was a very controversial paper that came out from my colleagues who are kind of the experts on firms in developing countries that said that actually women who receive microcredit, their businesses are less productive. This was very controversial, obviously, because so much of microcredit has been about giving to women. But then nobody has been able to figure out why that is. And then everybody has their own ideas, of why that is. And it's a dangerous thing to say, because if you think that it's because of less productivity, for example, that could cause you to make some policy implications that would be wrong, potentially, right? And so that's why it was so important for us to actually try to figure out what are the common reasons people say for why the female-led businesses are less, and which ones can we say are not there, and what do we think is actually driving this difference? Let me say that, first of all, the manufacturing firms are all quite far from people's houses. So these are not firms that are, by the home, for example. So that can't really explain that. So we have to think about other things within this that are explaining that. Some of the things that people say is that women work less hours because they want to be with their families. Turns out in our sample, absolutely not. When we control for hours, it makes no difference in reducing the gender gap. So women are working the same number of hours in our sample in the manufacturing sector. Is it because of educational differences that men actually have more education and therefore they're making more profits? No, it turns out in our sample, actually women have generally higher education levels. So the women that end up creating manufacturing firms in our sample actually have higher education levels than those same men in the sample, and yet they're earning less. Is it potentially that it's not about education, but it's about business training? That men get access to business training, they have more business training. No, in fact, women report having more training for their businesses, and yet earning less. Is it differences in business practices? So maybe the women are getting training, but they're not putting it into practice. So what do we think are business practices? Keeping track of your profits, keeping accounting, etc. Women actually do the same amount of these good business practices that we consider than men. So what is going on? And any other thoughts you have, especially in the panel, and then after, we'd be very happy to explore in our data to really understand what's driving this. But I'm going to try to posit one hypothesis that we put forward in this paper as a way of trying to understand why. Why do these businesses earn less? And before I sort of put forward the whole hypothesis, I want to just show you a couple other facts. So female entrepreneurs trust less in other people than male entrepreneurs. This is the generalized trust question that we used in our survey, but has also been used around the world. It's the World Values Survey question that says, do you trust others? That question has been shown in studies around the world to be highly correlated with economic growth. So the more trust there is in a society, this has been shown by many economists, the more economic growth there is. And that, in the manufacturing sector, you can imagine why. Because actually it allows you to be able to invest in fixed investment type of activities, which actually have higher returns and higher profits. So the general trust question is quite different between men and women. And even the question about, do you trust your neighbors and do you trust strangers? Men do that more. And it doesn't mean that women are less trusting in general or less somehow altruistic. It has nothing to do with that. It has very much to do, likely, with the experience that women have of whether they can trust in the market. And this is highly correlated. Their answers to these questions of trust is highly correlated with their reported activities of economic cooperation. So we find that they cooperate less than the male-led businesses, which I previewed for you before. So for example, the first graph in the upper left shows you how often, we ask how often do you buy jointly with another business? Whether male-led or female-led, how often do you buy jointly? The second one is how often do you lend to another business? How often do you share an order? And how often do you share advice? These are economic activities which can lead to greater profits. And in most cases, there is a significant difference between men and women in the extent to which they undertake these cooperative activities. And these are related again to the degree of trust that they say in the surveys that they report having. Okay, so I've put these other two facts on the table. Now, how do we bring all of these facts together? How do we understand all of these facts in a coherent and uniform way? I'm going to put one other fact on the table. Okay, one other fact. women's businesses are more reliant on their partner's financial support. So on the left, you see the capital from spouse and by industry. Okay, so whether women are in apparel, so you know on the left you see the blue bar chart is men in apparel and how much capital they get from their spouses. The red bar chart is women in apparel and how much capital they get from their spouse. Also in food and also in other sectors within manufacturing. So that's about capital. And then the second is about whether the spouse helps to co-own the business. Now, I'm not going to talk about this aspect very much because what we focus on in this paper is much more about interactions with men and women who are not your spouse. But I just want to put this up there because in our future work, we're very, very interested in understanding the intra-household dynamics. And I was so happy and interested to hear from our colleague from the Economics Association of Zambia, because I work very much in other countries, a little bit in Zambia, but much in other countries on household dynamics of income. And so it was very, very interesting to me to hear about who holds the money in Zambia. And we're very interested in the spousal dynamics in businesses and how that affects both the home life and the business life. And so any thoughts you have on that, including after the session, we would love to hear, because that's our new project and we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Okay, so now how do we bring together all of these facts? We think about a model in which male and female entrepreneurs are interacting together, and they need to interact together to engage in economic activities. And again, here we're not going to talk about spouses, okay? It's just mainly like, I'm in the market, I'm thinking about who to trade with, I'm thinking about who to share advice with, who to share a bid with, etc. And I'm a woman, and I am deciding whether I'm going to be engaging with a man. Here's the thing, that many men actually have, they can have higher productivity in some aspects, but actually they have also higher bargaining power in some way. And the way we think about this is that, and this is where it comes a little bit, not controversial, I have to say, because I think this is the case not just in Zambia. This is not a Zambia-specific model. Okay? I mean, we came out of seeing those facts that you saw, this theory that we're starting to develop. But I have to say, I think it resonates with a lot of people around the world. That actually, let's be really honest with each other. You know, men actually have a little bit of an advantage because, whether because of their physical ability to exert violence, not because they do, but because they can, or because of the social norms. There may always be the case that when a woman is interacting and transacting with a man in an economic transaction, there is always the fear that he could evoke that greater power to negate any agreement they had. So that as a woman, if I make an agreement with a man, if I don't have any other legal support or any other support, I may always fear that at some moment he won't deliver, and there's not much I can do about it because he has access to other forms of enforcement or other ability to resort to violence or social norms. And so that creates a situation where, as a woman, I may prefer to just avoid that interaction altogether. And I prefer to just interact with other women, even if that means that I may not have the greatest profits or growth in my business because I may not be able to find the high productive men who could, for example, I'm creating some tailoring, he can go somewhere else and sell it, and he's very good at selling it, but maybe I don't want to because he could just run away with my materials and I don't have a recourse for that. Or, one marketeer I talked to in the market said to me, I used to hire men to be my employees, but now, what I realized is that when I leave them in the market so that I can go and do the other things that I need to do, when I leave them in my shop, then suddenly he created all his own clients, and then I didn't have anything I could do. And so now I just prefer, even though he was so good at his job and he made a lot of profits for my business, But because I didn't feel I could trust him, I just had to let him go, and now I only work with women. So this sort of suggests a world in which women may be more attracted to the sectors where there are other women that they can interact with, rather than the sectors that are more male-dominated. Not because that's their underlying preference, or that's their underlying ability level, but rather because it puts them in a safe place to be able to transact in a safe economic transaction. Again, this doesn't mean that the men in the market are exerting violence. All that matters is that there is the possibility of that to create a breakdown in wanting to engage in that type of transaction. But this also suggests that by strengthening rule of law and by strengthening local institutions who can protect the kinds of agreements that entrepreneurs and marketeers come up with, this could actually highly foster economic growth, and in particular, especially be helpful for female entrepreneurship. So there is this complementarity between rule of law and female entrepreneurship. And so what we ask in this paper is, can the presence of legal institutions compensate for the difference in bargaining power between male and female entrepreneurs, thereby reducing the gender gap that we see, that I showed you in our early results in the baseline survey. Here we focus on two legal institutions, the Small Claims Court, the SEC, which was founded in 2009 to handle cases between individuals worth less than, the cases should need to be less than 20,000 kwacha. You don't need to hire a lawyer to defend you there. There is no cost to going to the court. It's quite a fast court. However, we do find in our sample that 80% of people don't know about the court. And 10% additionally think that the court is not for people like them, it's for the big people. And so we look at, the effect potentially of the Small Claims Court in helping to facilitate economic transactions. And then we also look at market chiefs as a local grown institution that could also help facilitate market transactions. What we find is that when women are in a market with a market chief, it increases the probability of engaging in cooperative activities by 5 to 12 percentage points. The effect is especially strong for female entrepreneurs. It's strong for everyone. Okay. Now, first of all, very importantly, this doesn't mean that the market chiefs are causally doing something, right? This is a correlation that just shows you that if you are placed in a market, you are much more likely to do these economic cooperation activities. Markets do a lot of things, as you well know, in Lusaka. They help to select the people who go in the markets, right? So there's a selection process. They monitor each other. Okay, so there's lots of reasons why this would be there, but I want to show you this correlation that helps suggest that these institutions can play a causal role. And it increases female entrepreneurs' earnings by 20 to 30%, being in the market rather than outside the market. Even here, controlling for the density. So it's not just about having a lot of firms near you, and therefore you can do this, it's also the density. Now, thinking about the Small Claims Court, if you're closer to the Small Claims Court, which likely means that you know more about it and you're more likely to use it, that reduces when you're farther away from the Small Claims Court, you're much less likely to cooperate, to do economic cooperation, and that's especially true for female entrepreneurs, and it reduces the earnings. Again, most people don't even know about the Small Claims Court here, but this is where we see this. So this really suggested to us that there could be a strong role for these local institutions in helping to facilitate economic collaboration and business cooperation. So what we do as a first step is just to take an experimental game that basically mimics, with real money, a form of business cooperation and see what effect these actual local institutions have on an experiment that is done within these markets with the marketeers. Okay. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the game. And so the game is basically, let me see if we have, yeah, okay. So we do this with the actual entrepreneurs or the marketeers within, inside and around the formal markets. And we do it in the participant's shop. So we try to make it as realistic as possible. Obviously, doing these lab experiments in the field, they're always a little bit unusual. And so we try to make it as naturalistic as possible. And we involve the actual local rulers. So we tell the market chiefs what we're doing. We'd like them to be involved. And I'll show you exactly how we create the local institutions and bring them into the decisions that the marketeers are making in terms of economic cooperation. Okay, now what is this game? In this game, basically, I give Dr. Chiwele something like 1,000 kwacha. I give you 10 tokens, but I give you actual money. And I tell him, now, you know, there's a marketeer over there in the market or outside the market. I tell him who it is, but I don't tell him who the marketeer is. It's anonymous, okay? I don't tell him the gender or anything else. I just say, you can send some money over there if you want. If you send it over there, basically, you're loaning it to that entrepreneur, and we will triple the money. This reflects that sometimes when you invest in somebody else's business, it will grow. Then that person has the decision about how much more to send back to you. And so, you know, in an efficient world, okay, so if we think about efficient markets where there is full trust, what would you do? What is the profit maximizing decision here? In an efficient world, it is for him to send everything and for the person over there to send back half. Because what does that mean? He sends over 10. It actually turns into 30, which reflects economies of scale. Okay. And he gets back 15. So now he's grown and the other side has grown as well. But of course, he needs to trust the other side to be able to do that, right? Because otherwise the person could just decide, now they have all the bargaining power, and they could just decide to send nothing back to him and he has no recourse, right? So that's why people have used this game all around the world and shown how correlated it is with economic growth. Because it is trust is the lubricant that allows economic transactions to occur. And so they play both sides. And then what we do, remember I said that usually in this game, he has no recourse. If the other side sends nothing back, that's it, he's lost his money. But now we introduce local institutions. So a subsample of the people that are playing this game, we say, you know, you can appeal to a local institution. And for half of them, they can appeal to, we tell them they can appeal to your market chief. And to the others, we say you can appeal to the small claims court. Okay. So now I asked Dr. Chiwele, look, now you have access to the small claims court if you feel that the decision of the other side was not fair. Because you invested this money and they sent nothing back to you, you have recourse now. And that way we look and see if he actually is able to send more. If we find that, for example, the fact that Dr. Chiwele now has access to the small claims court to be able to say, to have recourse in case he's taken advantage of by the other side and nothing is sent back. And now he sends more. What does that mean? It means he's created value for the both sides, right? Because everything he sends is tripled. So this is reflecting that we increase the pie by investment and trust. And this gives us a measurement of the causal effect of an institution on that decision. So let me just show you the baseline where you don't have the institution. Okay, you don't have a market chief recourse, you don't have recourse to a market chief or to a small claims court. How much do people send? Okay. So, and I'll show you by women and men. So this is when no recourse to the institutions, okay? Men send on average about 4.2, okay, almost half of the money that gets tripled. They don't send everything, but they do send a good amount. Women send far, far less. Okay, they send less than half of that. So that reflects, again, the same things from the survey that women report feeling less trusting towards strangers or even neighbors. Okay. And it also reflects, by the way, what they might feel they might experience from the other side. Because, of course, this is, if you feel that the other side is going to take advantage, you're going to send less. Now, what happens if you add institutions? Here is when you have access to the small claims court. We say, and here's how we do it, by the way. I haven't explained this. What do I mean by access to the small claims court? What we do is, remember that 80% of our sample didn't even know about the small claims court. So we tell them, you know, there's a small claims court. It was founded in 2009. Here's where it is. It takes all of the transactions up to 20,000 kwacha. But we made it real. We actually went and talked to the clerks. And here in the audience, we have Twive from the International Growth Center, who's been working very closely with the small claims court. Has been an extraordinary partner for us. And we went to them, the clerks there, and we said, if somebody were to come to you, you know, we're going to play this game, but it's with real stakes and with real money. If someone were to come to you and say, you know, I sent this money over there and I had hoped and expected that they would send at least half back, but they didn't, is that something you would rule on? And they said, yes, that actually is very similar to many of the claims that come through our court. So we said, okay, well, we would like you to make some rulings on whatever kind of distribution would be there. So for example, we give all of the, so let's say it's up to 10 you could give. We say, if someone gave 10 and somebody gave nothing back, what would you rule? If someone gave 9 and they gave half of it back, what would you rule? So every possible combination of each side, we asked the judge in the small claims court to make a ruling on beforehand. And that's how we could say to the participants that actually their decisions, if they decide to go to the small claims court, the judge will rule on them. Okay, so that's how we did it. Now, what happens when we add recourse to the judge and to that ruling? Both people's trust go up. Both men's and women's trust go up, and their willingness to send money goes up, but it goes up much more for women. So you can see that here. And then now the gap between men and women is much lower, as you can see on the right side between the blue and the red. We do the same with the market chief. This is very interesting. So the market chief, for the women, now they send even more than men, a little bit more. And what that means is that basically they have increased the pie for everyone by sending more, which they do in the presence of a recourse to a market chief. Here, crucially, what we find is that the profits for both sides go up. So what does this mean, actually? It means that both men and women, entrepreneurs, benefit from women being able to trust more in the presence of legal institutions, knowing that they will be protected. Both sides benefit. So now let's look at the trustworthiness, which is what we call trustworthiness. So how much do you send back? How much does the other side send back? This is just people sending on this side, trusting in order to increase the pie. How about sending back? Men send back more, actually, than women do. And it doesn't really matter if the market chief has recourse or not. Matters a lot if there's a small claims court. Both people send back a lot more in the presence of a small claims court. And as you can see, there's barely any gap now between men and women sending back more. So what do we learn from this exercise? We learn that access to rule of law. By the way, in the market chiefs, like we did the same thing as we did with the judges. We went to them and said, here's the distribution, how would you rule? So it's actual rulings, you know, of the market chief and the SEC. It's not just a game, really. Even though we call it a game, it's not really a game because it's real money and it's with the actual rulings of the local institutions. So what we find is that the rule of law benefits aggregate trust for both men and women, increasing the pie for everyone, but especially increases women's trusting behavior. And so overall efficiency is increasing in the presence of institutions. Let me say that this is the first causal micro-evidence we have from around the world, because it is so difficult to get causal evidence on the role of institutions and their effect on economic growth. And here we have the first evidence coming from Zambia on the importance of this. The investors' welfare rises as they receive more tokens back. The trustees' welfare remains the same, and that could be because of these opposite effects. So now, taking everything together, what do we learn from the study we did, and how do we go forward? The first thing we did was to document the large gender gaps in earnings, in trust, and in cooperation among Lusacan entrepreneurs who have less than 20 employees across Lusaka in the manufacturing sector. We find that these differences are not driven by differences in skill or hours worked or education. And we find that when legal institutions are present and are able to be accessed, it can increase overall welfare for both men and women, and it disproportionately helps female entrepreneurs. So what does this tell us? That when there is a lack of trust, by the way, one other thing I want to just share with you from the World Values Survey, this is around the world, right? Remember I was saying there's this overall international evidence that trust and economic growth are highly correlated. Around the world, trust in Africa is much lower than it is in any other place in the world, actually. So this is a general trend in Africa that trust in strangers is low, especially in urban areas, as you can imagine, and with such rapid urbanization. And that is related to a lower growth rate. But what this shows us is that this lack of trust, it's not gender neutral. It affects women much more than it affects men, possibly because they have less power in society and they may be more likely to be taken advantage of because of this lack of trust. And equally, precisely because of these same reasons of the differential in power between men and women that still exist in all of our societies, the rule of law is also not gender neutral. The rule of law also disproportionately can help female entrepreneurs and women around the world, and especially here in Zambia. And the beautiful thing is, what our research suggests is that by helping women, the rule of law helps everyone to benefit economically, including men. And so now we're at the stage of really wanting to understand all of these channels in which these institutions can affect entrepreneurial activity, deep context of the small claims court and its relationship with marketeers and the market chiefs, as well as some of the other household dynamics and spousal dynamics that I alluded to in the introduction. And so with that, I will leave you with our suggestions and our ideas of where we've come to so far, and tell you again, this is very much work in progress, and I deeply look forward to your feedback and your comments. Thank you.
I'll quickly invite the panel to come and take seats in front, please. Let me quickly introduce the panel. I know Dr. Chiwele did mention them, but I'll quickly introduce the panel to you. Obviously, on my immediate right is our keynote speaker, Professor Nava Ashraf. Next is our permanent secretary for the Ministry of Gender, Dr. Ponga. And the next is Dr. Chiselebwe Ngandwe, lecturer from the University of Zambia. And then next is Sylvia Mwansa, Vice President of Zambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ZACI in short. And then finally, we have the Zambia National Marketeers Credit Association President and Founder, Mupila Kamea. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. A hand, please. Just a welcoming, yes. Okay, so very interesting results that we've been given by Professor Ashraf. And my question, is there a microphone? Okay, yes, okay, good. Okay, the first question that I want to pose, why the rule of law? Why not finance and women? Yes, maybe that's the first question I would want to ask you. Yes. Can we just, yes, okay. Just make sure.
Test? Yeah. Excellent question. I think actually for the next project, we really want to work on finance and credit. I think in this case, we weren't, we wanted to explore this aspect. This is only one aspect. But I think credit is something that has been explored in many other studies, although we're very eager to explore it as well. But rule of law has not been explored in this same way. And so again, this is just one component that might be important. Certainly not the only one. But actually, and I think one other thing, and I'd love to hear from others maybe that have the similar experiences. I think that rule of law and credit actually and financial capital probably interact in important ways, you know, because the degree to which you might think that you would be able to get back the money, the degree to which you're creating a safe environment for transacting on financial capital may be also very influenced by the rule of law.
Okay, also I want to pose this question, why the manufacturing industry? Yes.
Yeah, I think for that, we were initially actually interested in this entire topic by thinking about the effect, the emphasis on clusters in so many developing countries, and especially also in Zambia, on economic growth. And really thinking about the sector that is kind of a very small sector in many African countries, the manufacturing sector, but which has outsized potential for driving economic growth because of the fact that it has economies of scale. We were interested in questions of trust and cooperation, but you know, if you just say trust and cooperation in business, it's not necessarily going to lead to economic profits. However, in manufacturing, because of the economies of scale, trust and cooperation are particularly important, and that's why we wanted to study it, both because trust and cooperation are important and because it's an important sector for economic growth.
Okay. I'm posing this question to Mrs. Mwansa, Sylvia Mwansa. Zaki, what is the, how are women involved in terms of the manufacturing industry? In Zaki, maybe you can just give us more details of Zaki and the manufacturing industry.
Hello, good morning. First of all, we would like to say that in understanding the research that has gone, you know, in this what we're talking about, we wanted to first of all find out in what description did this manufacturing come about. Is it manufacturing of the farmers, the small-scale farmers who are producing crops for the market, or is it manufacturing in the real sense of manufacturing? Because when you take this 48,000 and then in depth of 2,000 manufacturers, because we all know that Zambia is a trading country, and most of the manufacturing, if we can take this survey, I would want to find out, first of all, the description of the manufacturing of the survey.
I'm just pulling up the pie chart. We went through it a little bit quickly. There's no one in farming because it's all Lusaka, but here we go. Let me just take us through this. A little bit more detail. So these are in wood and metal manufacturing. Wood and metal manufacturing, so especially furniture, gates, these things, but anyone who is in wood and metal manufacturing, in printing, in apparel, in food, and in anything else that's considered manufacturing by the labor surveys. So people would tell us what they're in, and we would code them according to the labor surveys. So that's the sectors that we looked at here.
Okay. Most of our members really are drawn from people who are structured, and people who govern by corporate governance, and people who are doing trade and manufacturing, and most of our members are across the country. And from the question that you ask, how involved are women in the businesses? In fact, this is what we're trying to do in order to make sure that members of Zaki incorporate women enterprises, because women play a big role, as we've seen even at the lower level of where the survey targeted. Once we have many women involved in the chambers, then we'll have a cross-section of how we can deal with all the challenges or the issues that affect women. Because when these decisions are made, they are made for everyone. But when you have got low membership of women, then their problems and their issues are not taken on board. And this is how come, even in your survey, you find that certain issues that are supposed to be benefiting women, they're actually not benefiting the women. When you take into consideration, like probably the loans that are available, there are so many platforms where they are saying there's women finance, women cheaper finance their businesses. But in actual fact, they are not accessible by a lot of women who are trying to do entrepreneurship. And because they are not accessible, or even when they are accessible, maybe the people that are in the background who are actually writing the business plans, making sure that they get these loans, when the loans are obtained, maybe some of them are used by the male that are really not coming in front. And therefore, we need participation in real sense of women entrepreneurs in all the chambers that we have across the country. We've got chambers everywhere, and I can tell you that I'm the first woman to sit on the board of Zaki, and one of the main things that we've agreed in the chamber is to encourage women-run institutions, so that when these issues are brought about, and because Zaki gets consulted, even like this morning, why a CEO is not here and I've had to come and represent her, is because they're in Parliament being asked about how certain things should be done, and then getting the input from them so that everyone else can be able to benefit. So women, I challenge you, if you are running a business, belong to a chamber anywhere where you are. And therefore, when you do that, your voice will be heard. You'll be sitting at the right place at the right time to make these decisions that make you thrive and be able to access this money that is every day talked about at UNDP, at maybe the gender PS would be able to advance. There's so much money. Africa Development Bank, they come in the annual meetings, they're saying there's money that is set aside for, for women. But at the end of the day, no one has come with a success story to share that this money was obtained, through these fora. And I keep on challenging my colleagues that let's have, even if it was 10 entrepreneurs who access these, women entrepreneurs who access these funds, and let's tell the story of their successes so that it can form as, even when you want to do research like this, those are the people that you should be able to interview, to survey and say, where have you come from? What are you achieving? How have you achieved? and therefore would be able to, to carry the day forward. So chambers and involvement, even when you come to do, many people that come to do research, they should partner with institutions who are able to carry forward your research findings and use them. Because if research is not used or it's not resolving a need, then it's not a research that is going to be welcomed, and that you've spent money and it is dealing with the nitty-gritties of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is huge, and we should be able to align what is it that we are getting out of this, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Okay. Maybe just carry on. What does this report and the report findings, the conclusions of this research, what does it mean to you? How do you interpret it? I would leave this to the panel, just anyone can pick it up from there. You can also start.
I can also start, yeah. Like we are, in Zaki's point of view, we are not of the view that the rule of law has a significant impact in reducing the gender gap in entrepreneurship. The gap has more to do with access to affordable finance and cultural factors than the rule of law. So maybe we can take it from there.
I find the conclusion quite interesting, and as I was sitting there, I had a number of things going on in my mind. I like the idea of it's not skills, it's not education, what is it? And I'm sitting there and I want to narrate a story of women who make figures of animals, and they actually export them out of the country. Now, this particular woman was the expert and was teaching others. On a very bad day, she couldn't even complete the first item when on a normal day she'd be making 3 elephants, as an example. When interacted with and further asked, she'd been beaten by the husband the night before, and that affected her mood, and she couldn't perform at work. So I'm thinking there's a lot to do with your emotional well-being when you get to work. There's a lot to do with your frame of mind in terms of how am I going to work. And I think that for me, this then brings the idea of why, for example, does government have an act on anti-GBV? What does that do? The fact that you have been beaten demoralizes you, doesn't make you want to go out and be seen with a black eye or whatever. So the tendency is, if I'm not staying home, then my performance would be not to the utmost or optimal. That's one. And then I want to say that whereas Zaki thinks that rule of law is not necessary, I always think that as women, no matter how educated you are or how powerful you are, you still get a lot of experiences where you are cheated out of your money. Mm-hmm. And that can be very painful. So I'll give you an example. I'm building my own house, and these workers are workers I'm paying, but they'll still think, this is just a woman. Mm-hmm. So they go away with your bags of cement, and by the time you find that out, you go to the police and report, you don't get those bags of cement back. You would have lost quite a lot. So for me, I think that if I knew that if I went to the police and reported that these things have been stolen and I can get them back or get the culprits punished, I probably would employ more men in whatever I am doing. So there's a lot of social norms around the way we interact. The process of even just getting something reported and having it dealt with, or the police coming to your home to see what has happened, is probably non-existent. So in the end, you're saying, why should I even report? So for me, I'd like to see that maybe developed further in the next research, because I really think that...
Permanent Secretary, please move your mic closer to your mouth.
Oh, are people not hearing me?
No.
So I need to start all over again?
Yes, it was so good.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I see the people at the back saying they heard nothing, so I don't know if I can recap what I was saying.
Please do.
I was saying that the frame of mind and your emotional well-being has a lot of impact in the manufacturing industry. And I was giving an example of a woman that has been trained to make, elephant animal figures, and they're sending this out of the country for export. And She was the expert and was teaching others. But on this particular day, she gets to her workplace and is unable to complete even one item. And so in interacting with her, she actually narrates how the night before she'd been battered or abused by the husband. So I'm adding that to the fact that your frame of mind, your emotional well-being affects how you perform at work. So when we started off, we were looking at skills. It's not education. What is it? And so I boiled it down to the frame of mind in which you are and the emotional well-being and the state that you are in as you get to the office. And I was saying, so sometimes when government is hammering and harping on having an anti-GBV act, we wonder why. But it's those underlying things that make government come up with laws or policies that make sure that we are all safe in our homes, but also in our workplaces. The second example I was giving was about myself. I'm building my own house. And even as I recruit these men, I'm actually saying, if they steal from me, where do I go? So you go back home, and you've left people working for you. They've disappeared with your bags of cement. You report to the police. They may not come immediately to the scene of the theft, and it may take hours before they come, if they have fuel in the car, because it depends also where you live. So then, in the end, you've lost something, and you're not sure that you can actually get recourse for what you've lost. There's nothing really in place to support you as you go around complaining about what you've lost. So in the end, as a woman that's going to give out 10 tokens, I probably will keep them and see what I can do with them, because I don't trust men especially, but also sometimes even your own neighbors cheat you out of your money. And a lot of us as women have had those experiences. You're trying to start a business, you lose your entire capital to somebody who says, I'll multiply this for you. And there are stories going around, and we still are hesitant, but sometimes we try them out. Now with even the internet and the cyber space, it's people giving you, here is an account in which you deposit and we'll give you this and that in return. We are actually at the moment in the ministry working with COMESA, and they are wanting to do a platform, a virtual one, where women can trade. And I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, if somebody can say, don't send this money to my number because it's not working, use this one, and you lose a whole lot of 1,800, would I want to trade in that space? So there are a lot of inhibitions, and I kind of agree that there's a whole issue around trust. And maybe as we work, a lot of people keep asking, why do you focus on women? Part of it is to bring them in a space where they can build these skills and begin to trust. And you go beyond the fact that you can actually venture together into a business and see it work. So they'll start with small monies, and hopefully incrementally it could be a lot of money. I'll stop there for the time being. I hope that was clear.
Okay, please.
One thing I just wanted to, actually, because one of the results I didn't show, what you said about not really feeling you could go to the police, and no matter how educated you are as a woman, feeling that it's possible that if you hire men, they may take advantage of you or take your capital. And actually, one of the things we found was that women are much less likely to go to the police or to ask for a report, even though they may have more crimes committed against them. So there's clearly some sense that it's not going to help that much.
Okay, I'll soon open up the discussion to the guests, but first of all, let me get a feedback of the report from the two panelists who have remained.
Okay.
Please just put it close to your mouth.
Yeah. If I followed, you were saying men tend to employ more people, which would mean they are operating at a bigger level, and I would expect that they might be able to exploit economies of scale, and maybe that should come in also in your analysis. The issue of trust. If it affects the cooperative, because in business you have to interact with all kinds of people. And if the issue of trust is hindering your ability to interact, then naturally you are at a disadvantage. The related issue is it has a bearing on your risk appetite. Because in any business, we are taking chances. We are taking risks. And if you are risk averse, you don't want to take risks, it puts you at a disadvantage. And if we are told the women are less trusting, chances are they are more risk averse and they are not taking their chances in business. That might undermine their performance. The dependence on financial support, presumably mainly from the husband, that will have consequences on the future investment of what's coming in. And some of the businesses we are talking about, the behavior in the house might be slightly different from the picture we got earlier, where the man's money belongs to everybody and the woman's money is for her. But chances are the typical entrepreneurs we are talking about, it might be a slightly different situation. This is where the woman makes money and the husband is there, perhaps drinking all day and waiting for that money to come and presides over its utilization. And this is more especially when, if the financial support came from him. Now, there has been the issue of indiscipline among workers. Indiscipline among workers is a general problem in Zambia. And I believe it's gender neutral. Whether you're a man or a woman, building, the workers will steal your cement. The workers will do anything. Whether you're a man or a woman, you are out of your shop, chances are you will find all kinds of unexpected activities. So maybe let's not... I go back to Zaki's point. While I share Dr. Ponga's emphasis and appropriately placed on rule of law, I would support Zaki's perspective that maybe when we look at the challenges we are facing here, maybe that's not the priority area. It may not be the priority area because business, you are expected to, the recourse to law is the last thing you want in business. And it's not a common thing. You really just have to operate as much as possible with minimal recourse to law. If we are talking entrepreneurship, let's focus more on the factors in the entrepreneurship arena, how you interact with others and how you manage challenges, including indisciplined workers and things like that. And of course, we will always, we must always find a court of law to go to if things go wrong. But I would be uncomfortable to try and put the law issue up front, because I think there are fundamental challenges within the commercial arena which need to be dealt with. And perhaps the whole issue of social dynamics may need to be revisited. We can dismiss it easily as not being pertinent, but I think it seems to me it may need to be revisited. To find out, for instance, I'll take the example of Lesotho. Lesotho in this region is the only country I know which is predominantly, where the small business sector is predominantly women. And there are social dynamics to explain that. So similarly here, where you have, I think we could dig a little deeper into the social dynamics. Finally, we may need also to pay attention to historics. We are talking of 25% women in manufacturing today. I bet a few years back, I don't know how long back, it was predominant, it was probably 100% dominated by men. And so, as we look at it today, 25, 30% is very low, but depending on where we are coming from, we may have made some progress which needs to be recognized, and perhaps we can dig into this progress to find out which were the drivers of this change and which were the barriers to that change. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As for us, the report is quite good, but dealing with especially marketeers, where I think these entrepreneurs are coming from, out of what has been reported, we believe that the best thing that can probably create a situation where women entrepreneurs' businesses grow is a very important area of capitalization. So if this can be included, I think we'll be able to see a lot of women, businesses growing. This has been a major challenge in this country, because even some of the financials we have in this country, for you to get a small loan, they'll talk about collateral. That's the first thing. And the interest rates are so high. So when you get these monies, you simply work for them, because before you finish paying that money, you will have started looking for money elsewhere. So it's been a challenge. How do these businesses grow? So for us, that's what basically we may want to see in the next report. And also the issue of capacity building, which is very important, because many women, they just start business because they've learned from a neighbor. They've heard that if you start selling this at this period of time, you'll be able to make money without getting into education or trying to be trained on how they can run that business. So capacity building is also the number 2 thing that is very important for us. Thank you.
I'll open up the discussion now, but before I do, I hope there's a microphone somewhere there. Oh, okay, good. Before I do, I just maybe if there are any lawyers in here. I would like to hear maybe their view as well in terms of the rule of law when it comes to entrepreneurship. So if there are any lawyers, please feel free to comment. Can I get hands so that and please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Chiara Chiumia, and I'm here from the Economics Association of Zambia. The research is interesting, but I think there's too many assumptions from where I'm coming from, especially when it comes to the behavior of people. And I think a lot of it assumes that certain things are going to happen simply because a person is an entrepreneur in the manufacturing sector. So I just wanted to say that. And especially when it comes to the male-female dynamics in the society that we live in. So the reason I put my hand up really was because I wanted to hear what are the social factors in Lesotho that makes it different, because you didn't actually go into them. Maybe we can learn something from them.
Also, is your background law? I was just wanted to make sure we have the answer to her question.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay. There's another hand behind there. Before.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Lutangu Ingombe from Unza. But my name is Lutangu Ingombe from the University of Zambia. First and foremost, I want to commend the research results, especially that they are encouraging. Let me just say the results are encouraging us moving away from just macro policies, but microeconomic policies that are lacking in the country. I'll explain that by zeroing in one of the results that came out, where you said female-led businesses earn less than men, especially if you look at the apparel industry. I also want to add that for Zambia, the apparel industry earns less, both for men and women, if you compare it globally. We are very aware that this is the sector that creates millionaires, if not billionaires, in other countries. But in Zambia, if you are in the apparel industry, whether you are male or female, there are no prospects of being a millionaire or even earning a living in that sector. Let me just say the chances are few. Yeah. So I want to argue that in addition to the findings, I think we don't have very specific microeconomic policies that are targeted towards certain products. Let's say the meat product, the apparel products, and so forth. So no wonder in the ministries like, say, Minister of Commerce and Trade, we don't have someone who is a trade expert, maybe domestic trade expert, but expert in what? In almost everything. So we need someone employed, say, is an expert in trade in apparel, trade in meat products, trade. In that way, we're going to see specialization and even more energies towards a sector. I'm so much interested in the apparel industry because we know that we know what is killing our apparel industry. It's the presence of things like Salaula. Salaula has killed the whole industry completely. So that is one. So we're importing almost everything, very very cheap, coming from I don't know where. So that is something that we can look at. And then in addition, you are going to see that most of the apparel firms that come in, especially the retail industries, we allow them to import 100% of everything that they stock. People, the Chinese, they will bring in everything from China in their shop. There's no policy to compel them to stock at least something from the local manufacturers. So you see that the Indians, they also get from India. The South African firms, they've got everything in their shop made from South Africa and so forth. So for me, I think we need specific policies for specific industries, not just macro industries. I mean macro policies such as high GDP, lower inflation, and so forth. So we need to zero in into those things. And by the way, I always, I think in every forum, I always argue that we are so much obsessed with the GDP. If we really understand GDP, I think we won't be praising it, because we know that we are supposed to be focusing on the GNP, the contribution of our own citizens to the GDP. Yeah. So if so, we know that of late our GDP has been growing, but I'm 100% sure that our GNP has been going down drastically. No wonder we are seeing poverty and so forth. So we don't want to import absolutely everything. Imagine simple things, simple apparels like, say, bombasas, school uniforms, jerseys, belts.
Okay, I'm giving you a minute, please. Wind up.
Bed sheets. We're importing almost everything. Yeah. So I think we need very micro policies for every product that we think can create entrepreneurs. So I'm just giving an example of the apparel industry. And
thank you so much. Thank you. Can I get any feedback from the panel?
Just very quick reactions to both comments and also to my fellow panelists. Very helpful response to the paper. I'll leave the question of micropolicies. I think I agree. And one thing I wanted to link to is what many of my panelists said, fellow panelists said about financing and capitalization and capacity building, which I agree are absolutely crucial. And I'd love in this next study for us to really focus on financing and where that comes from, what are the obstacles, et cetera. And in particular, I think one very interesting idea that could bring together both the capacity building and the micro policies is something that our colleague from the Chamber of Commerce mentioned, which is really taking these success stories of the people who have really expanded, including in the apparel industry, you know, the people who have made millionaires, and just say, you know, what did cause their success, and be able to have them as stories and role models. I think that's an incredibly powerful way to learn. One thing I just wanted to mention is that although it's true that the apparel industry in general makes less than in other manufacturing sectors, even within that women make less. And again, that may have to do with capitalization as well. And that's something we should definitely explore. On the question of the assumptions in the research, actually, one of the things we tried very hard to do in this research is just to show you descriptive evidence, really. All of it is just from the results that just are things that were came out from the numbers. So that's really, we weren't really making any assumptions. This was something that we went into without any real ideas of what we would find. And in fact, we're surprised to find such strong gender gaps. But I also would be very interested in the question you asked about understanding which were the social factors for success in Lesotho. So maybe we can actually ask if you might have any thoughts on that. I'm not sure who brought that up, but that was very interesting. What determined that success?
The social. When I was director of CEDOM, I was sharing with my Kenyan counterpart the fact that our observation in Zambia was that women entrepreneurs were doing very well. compared to men. And he said, this is our observation in Kenya too. You support a woman entrepreneur, and she's doing very well. And next time, a few months down the line, you go there, you find the business has closed because the husband requested to be involved and ruin the company. So, so the point I would like to make is that there is no, in terms of concrete observations in Zambia and what we picked from Kenya, women generally are better entrepreneurs than men. But what tends to confuse women entrepreneurs is sometimes the interference from their husbands, emotional challenges, which has been elaborated. And so I think we do need to dig a little deeper into these social relationships and how they go to impact on enterprises run by women.
Okay.
These have been interesting comments, and from Zaki's point of view, and what also came out of when Professor was giving the study is something on the missing middle. We are trying to bring back, you know, or I can say the missing middle has been destroyed. The middle class has been destroyed, and this is how come we cannot even measure successes in terms of what we are getting out of entrepreneurship. I myself am an entrepreneur of 24 years, and I'm actually in apparel. If you know SBM, What's New Boutiques, I am behind those. And what I can say is, especially in apparel, and you're trading in a place which has got rentals in US dollars, and you are trading in kwacha, selling in kwacha. The same product that you had 2 years ago, you bought it maybe at $20. You're selling it at maybe 200 kwacha. The same $20, if you go today, you will need 3 times the kwacha that you needed 2 years ago. But here in Zambia, you cannot price it 3 times than the last time that you got it. And people don't understand. Maybe the economists would understand what's going on, and because they're the owners of this platform, maybe they can take it forward when the next research is being conducted. I myself am a candidate in Doctorate of Business Administration, and my research is the effect of depreciation on entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs who are doing business in one of their components has got to do with foreign exchange. And the results, I haven't yet done the research, but just from my own experience, where the last check that I did sign at Manda Hill, when we decided, because it was not making sense, when we decided to move out of Manda Hill to another place, was 128,000 kwacha for 1 month. But it is the same dollar, it's the same $10,000 that we were paying when we moved there in 1999. We were paying 15,000 kwacha. So these are some of the things that are making people in apparel not to grow, but to always go down. We have to find a common denominator where we can revive and create entrepreneurship that we want to, you know, to leave a taste of time. And this will only happen if the missing middle is enhanced.
Okay, can I get more reactions? There's a lady here. I think as an entrepreneur, I'm able to relate to most of the findings from this research. The aspect, especially the aspect of not trusting, is one thing that we face every day as entrepreneurs, and I think it may not be an assumption, but something that is actually going on. Yes.
Thank you. My name's Mudenda Liwangani. I'm from Swain.
You're from where?
Swain.
Swain, okay.
Yes. Christian Entrepreneur Women Network.
Okay.
Yes. My first questions go to Professor. It's on the small claims court. As much as people are aware of that and others are not, I think there's a very bad attitude with the workers that side. I think when I heard about it, I went there once. And then the response that I got was not very good. I'm talking about the people who don't have the knowledge on things. Because what they do is that they'll tell you, pay 5 kwacha, you pay, fill in these forms, take them. They don't remain with a copy. They ask you to go and deliver the note. Then when you go back to them and tell them that this person is not responding, they'll give you another paper to fill in and tell you, fill it in, then you come back after a week. You go there, they don't even get the number of the person to follow up, to call that person to go to the court. They expect you to do everything, and I don't know why they ask us to pay 5 kwacha, pay 67 kwacha. And I experienced a very bad experience when they were talking to another lady who has no knowledge, and it's because of the way that woman was appearing. I think I chipped in and I told them, I said, no, you're supposed to educate people on what they are supposed to do. I think customer service has to be looked at there. I'm appealing on that one.
Thank you.
I think I'm also asking Zaki, you should also enlighten us more on how we can join and if we are supposed to pay membership, because we are growing and we also want to go on that one. Professor, work on the small claims court. Please look at the staff.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful input.
Do you have representation from the small claims court? No? Okay. We have more reactions. There's a hand there. Okay. Okay, you can start with him.
Thank you very much. Oh, everyone is standing, so I need to stand. Thank you very much. My name is Billy Katontoka. I'm an author, a pastor, as well as an entrepreneur. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate you for this research and sharing it. It's quite mind-opening. One of the things that I pick out from this research is the distinction that we need to make between, in entrepreneurship, whether it's a small, micro entrepreneur for subsistence purposes, or it's a high-value entrepreneur for transformation purposes. And I think that is very, very critical because it speaks to some of the issues when we talk about capital, investment, where you're going to the bank to borrow. If you're a subsistence entrepreneur, even if you went to the bank when the bank asks for a collateral, you definitely are not going to get that loan. But if you're a high-value driven entrepreneur, borrowing examples from other countries, high-value driven entrepreneurs, they actually do venture capital. You go to a venture capitalist to invest into your idea. Or you do crowdfunding, where you don't have to go actually to the bank, but you ask for those who can buy into your idea. Therefore, the issue of high interest rates or even sourcing of funds become non-existent. And I'm seeing this happening a lot among women now in Zambia. Women have started creating what they are calling chilimba. If you belong to a chilimba as a woman and you are starting a business, the interest that you're going to get from the chilimba compared to the interest you get from the bank, they are totally different. You get more help from the chilimba. You get started easily. You get to be established. From there, then you can now start talking about like my sister talking about wanting to grow, wanting to become a member of Zaki. So we are, it's a question of understanding where you are at and what you want to achieve. In most cases, women are wanting to borrow money or crying out for capital, and yet the business idea is not properly defined. The business instruments are not in place. So, of course, you're going to be turned down. So we really need to have that structured sort of information to be at play. One of the reactions that I want to give to is the reaction of the rule of law. I find that to be very exceptionally interesting and exceptionally good. Even if we would like to say it's not something that we need not to have, in my view, it is something that needs to be in place. Why? Like it's been stated to say, it helps with economic activity and transaction and growth in other countries. I've had the privilege to live outside other countries where trust is indeed in place. Why? Because the law is enforced. The rule of law is in place. You can't do something without the law finding you. So here we can abscond, we can even disregard certain verbal contractual agreements because we know nothing, no one is going to do anything about us. But if the rule of law is in place, and if there's the attitude as we've heard from the claims court and from anyone who is given the responsibility to enforce that law, if their attitude is proper and they are not corrupt, then definitely I will have confidence to do business with a stranger because I know the templates that I will have received in terms of the contractual agreement, we sign an agreement, the agreement for employment, the agreement for building. If you are employing a builder, the builder before he comes on site, you say these are the rules, you sign here, you sign here. We have those agreements in place. If that builder or the employee steals or they do anything, I have recourse in my hand to go. And if the rule of law is working, I'm comfortable. I'll sleep peacefully. So I think for me that is my reaction to this. And it's funny, but I don't want to use this platform as a way of marketing my book. It's a new book, The Smart Savvy Woman Entrepreneur, and I'll give it to the PS because I'm looking. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I'm looking at helping women grow and move from local to global business entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a hand there. This side. The lady on the, just there, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Helen Samatevele. I'm running my own business. I've been doing that for the last 12 years. I want to commend the professor for the research. The outcomes are very interesting. I just want to pick one or two things. One of them is the definition of small-scale businesses. And I think every time we go to different sectors, they have a different definition. And when you have different definitions from different sectors, it becomes a problem, especially for policymakers to address that problem. For example, you go to the bank, you ask which category, they will ask you what is your turnover per year. And they will categorize you in a certain area. And that, again, is an issue. The other thing that I also wanted to bring to this house is the issue to do with, you mentioned that female-led businesses cooperate less than male-led businesses. Yes and no. Yes, because women, because of the other roles that they do outside the business, they have to maybe wind up their business at a certain time and go home and look after the house issues. So some of those small social issues come in. The men, when they knock off, they go to the bars, they go to clubs, they're able to interact and cut business deals there, which is a bit different for women. And I think we need to find a platform for women to interact at another level, because if I went to a club and one of my colleagues said, look, I'm busy now, come at 18 hours, over a drink, can we discuss something? Let's strike something, because right now I'm busy. I walk into a pub or that business area, someone will say, I saw Helen with this man, yet we're doing business. The inverted commas will start. So women start withdrawing from going to such places. The other thing that I also want to bring under social norms, and I think you didn't touch it, this is to do with, I think, sexual harassment. Maybe is the way, it's the term that I could use. You walk into a place, you're looking for business. The man or the men, they get the high beautiful. Already, you feel attacked. And tomorrow, you don't want to go to that place. Because already you've been defined as some sex object, not as a business person. So these are some of the things that we need to address if we have to make an impact, or if we need to make some inroads to encourage more women to take up entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw some, there's a hand behind, just, yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lupumbi Sekete. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a butcher. I do meat processing. I think the research is quite good, and it's something that I can relate to, considering the fact that I do some businesses in the market. That is my target market because it's densely populated. And some of the things that were highlighted are things that I experience on a daily basis. Considering women entrepreneurship, I see them, you find women that will be, that boast to be in markets for a long time. To say, I've been in this market for 15 years, but when you look at their businesses, there's no room for, there's no room for growth. Not that they don't have potential, but they lack the knowledge. They lack the big man said, the Zanama president. So I want to bring to the attention of the permanent secretary from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry that I think the institution of governance are not well coordinated. And I would love the council to, I would have loved to see the presence of the local authority, the council, because these are the ones that run the markets. What I want to say is women entrepreneurship needs programs, not necessarily capital, but at least continuous training, because I see a lot of potential in those markets when I'm passing. There are people that are brewing, they're doing chiwantu, they are doing munkoyo. Even in the streets, people are when you're passing, you see munkoyo packed in used bottles. You see, so those people need capacity building. You need to teach them. And unfortunately, what the local authority do is that they just confiscate everything. But that is not the right way of promoting women entrepreneurship. There are people that have not been to school. There are people that are literally illiterate, that don't even know about this gathering. So now, how are you going to help those that don't read newspapers, that are not on Facebook, that don't have the capacity to grow their businesses?
Thank you. I'll ask the comments to be just under 2 minutes, please. We can go like that.
Good morning. My name is Nelly Nyurenda. I'm an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneurship development consultant. And the major clients that I work with are women entrepreneurs. I think there are a lot of interesting insights from this research. One that has really struck me is the point on it's not skills, it's not education. What is it? I think that's a very interesting aspect that we need to probe further, because I think, like the other speakers have already mentioned, when you work with women, especially in the entrepreneurship development space, you realize that yes, the growth of their businesses is inhibited, but most of the time, most of them will tell you that what they need is money. They have no access to finance. But then when you get down to assess their businesses, you see that there are a lot of gaps. So when it comes to issues of skills, for example, somebody says they want to access a loan, but they have no systems whatsoever in the business. They don't keep records, they don't have a business plan. They're just running a business that is survivalist in nature. But they'll tell you that it's difficult for me to access finance, because even financiers are also running businesses. So when they're investing their monies into a business, they want to be sure that those people are going to pay back. So that's one other issue. So when it comes to not skills, not education, and especially for marketeers, I was really interested to really have a better understanding of what kind of skills are prevalent in those markets. What kind of business training skills have these people undergone, if you were able to interrogate that. And then did you also treat the groups as a homogeneous group? Or was there a moment where you said, maybe this one has gone up to this level of education, and this is how it has affected their business? And then maybe also for the business skills that they have undergone, to what extent do those business training skills address the issue of the mindset? So I was quite interested to see that. And then also most of the businesses that are in the markets are basically cut and paste. So you go to the market, everybody's selling tomatoes, everybody's selling fish. So what are some of those issues that inhibit creativity and innovation so that everybody runs the same kind of businesses? So I would be interested to also see some of those things maybe as you go forward to do your research. Thank you.
Okay, next reaction, please.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and it's a pleasure to be in this place. My name is Nancy Chiabi, an entrepreneur, female entrepreneur who is into construction and landscaping. From what I heard about women not making enough profits because they are not into trusting, I would like to I wanted to see something over sensitization where men are concerned, because most men do not have respect for women, and they think because you're a woman, you cannot perform as equally as they can. I once experienced this when we were both tendering for something. I won it first. The other person comes and just says, she's a woman. What does she know about laying pavers and putting up a structure? This person doesn't know me. Then I say, whoa, I've got 11 years of experience. What gives you the right to say, I don't know anything? So that particular kind of degrading of somebody before seeing what they're capable of doing, I think there has to be a lot of sensitization where an equal platform has to be given, not based on gender, but based on, can this person do it? That's my first. Secondly, duty, borders. We cannot grow in terms of industries if the machinery that is required to put up factories is having high duty rates. How are we going to set up? You are basically creating an economy which is bound to fail and a consumer economy and not a manufacturing economy. Because we can't bring in, how am I going to be a manufacturer? I can't buy machineries. So that has to be critically looked into. Then when we talk about steep export rules, I'm a person that wants to export things outside because I also grow things in agriculture. But you find that information, where to obtain information about the right things I need to have to export to outside countries is almost non-existent. Yes, there's ZDA, but how much sensitization has been given to people over export issues and preparing the minds of women to say you can achieve this? I believe majority of the women here have no idea, even some of the men have no idea how they can export their stuff and what grade can you export. So sensitization over that would be highly appreciated. Steep interest rates, financial lenders. My colleagues have already mentioned that. We are now resorting to ifilimba and also keeping our monies in our homes. Why? I will give you, if by God's grace, I've got lots of monies, I'll come and bring it to your bank. You will give me almost zero interest rate for using my money. But when I come to you to borrow me or to lend me some money, you give me a high interest rate to pay back. I end up failing. Why is it so not balanced? So I would rather give to my fellow woman in Chilimba who will charge me 10% interest rate than the bank that's going to give me 40% interest rate and collateral, which I don't have. Then they'll come and confiscate the little that I have.
Thank you. Just come, that 3 hands this side, and then the last one this side.
Thank you so much. My name
is it on?
My name is Nava. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a trader. I trade in automotive auto spares in Lusaka. It's very interesting to be part of this forum. I just want to ask Professor Ngandwe. I heard you saying you carried out a research and whose findings were that at one point we had so many successful female entrepreneurs in Zambia, if I got you right. I just wanted to find out if at one point you carried out another research on why most successful female entrepreneurs have broken homes.
Please.
The reason why I'm asking you this question is, with my experience on a flight to either Dubai or other places, I see so many things amongst our female counterparts that I can't mention in this room. I'm not being biased. Those who are taking it, what I'm saying as a negativity, I'm so sorry. But these are things that I see with my own eyes. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, can I get the 3 last comments, please? And then we get some reactions from the panel.
Good morning. My name is Musonka Silungwe. I'm from Zanamaka, the Zambia National Marketeers Credit Association, where I'm assisting them with their project implementation. One of the things which I think correlate to the study which was conducted by Professor Ashraf was that it's correlating the rule of law to the level of participation or the hindrances to the participation of women in entrepreneurship. One of the things which I would draw a line to on the study is the fact that it's looked at women seeking redress, assuming some event, disadvantaging event has taken place. One of the things which I would also urge the study to look at would be the flip side of that approach, is the legal frameworks and the legal steps being taken and reviewed to approach and empower and best protect these women who are trying to do business. We've looked at it from a point where the grievance has already taken place. I think it would also be important to look at strengthening the business environment from the other approach, because a lot of the legal frameworks regarding finance for 2018, in my view, are quite archaic and outdated. The levels of interests which are demanded by microfinancial organizations are just astronomical, and I cannot fathom or imagine how these how they come about with these types of outrageous interest rates on small amounts of money, which are paid at very regular and very short intervals and these interests are extracted from the very people that we might deem to be the most disadvantaged in the first place. I do not see how those kinds of exploitative models can be allowed to thrive. And if you look at the credit market currently, you get the picture that these are growing and becoming the most dominant in the sector. So the law must also be seen to be approaching the people for redress, or the policies and the policymakers. And I think this is an issue which I can throw to the PS agenda in terms of making sure that these policies are being rolled out to protect the women. On behalf of the gentlemen in here, I think to the lady who contributed earlier, Ms. Chiabi, I'd like to render an apology on the behalf of for the abuse which maybe one of our ill-mannered or a disgruntled colleague may have leveled against you. We apologize.
Thank you. Can I get the next?
Just to conclude, the other issue which we are very interested in as an organization, you gave us a very elaborate qualitative report on your study and the data which was collected. I think our president, Mr. Kamea, would attest that would be very much interested to cooperate with you as an organization that has a national platform, because we believe that your study was based on Lusaka, and would like the use of the good studies and the information and the advice that you could also give us to monetize the information, as I believe is the aim of the study. Thank you.
Okay, let me get the reaction from the lady here, and then I can get the reactions from the panels.
Good morning, everyone. And my question, mine is a comment, really.
Your name, please?
Oh, sorry. My name is Beatrice Nkanza. Okay. I'm not an entrepreneur as such, and neither am I a researcher. And perhaps I should mention that maybe if we had prior look at your report, maybe we would have had a lot more insight into what is driving the objective and the outcomes. But from what I've heard from you, Professor, I wanted to comment around the issue of the cultural context of the environment in which you were conducting your research. I know that you focused on women marketeers, women entrepreneurs, and so on. But from my bit of experience that I've had working in the area of entrepreneurship amongst men and women, I find that overall, we are not, compared to India, for example, where small businesses exist even at the family level, and therefore, children grow up knowing something, some, techniques about business. We don't have that in Zambia. Maybe now it's starting, and perhaps that would explain the problem that entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, are facing. Because starting a business is not just having money. It's not just finding a corner to sell your wares and it's going to fly. It's a mindset, it's a cultural, lifestyle kind of thing where there's a certain amount of discipline, consistency, knowledge, and things like that. So it's not just a whim. I wake up and my husband gives me money and I'm able to produce something or to sell something. So that's the point I think that we need to appreciate, that culturally that doesn't exist compared to, to other people like our Indian colleagues, for example, our Asian colleagues. Business is a way of life. So from the time I go to school, I go to the US, get a business degree, I come back here, I'm able to run a successful business because I have those tenets, I have those skills that I've acquired in the family over time. However, that doesn't mean that all is lost. I think the issue of capacity building has been touched on here and there. It's not just sitting in a room like this. I think some of it can be mentorship. Maybe entrepreneurs, before they venture out on their own, they can shadow a successful entrepreneur. They shadow them like an apprentice, get to understand how businesses run, how businesses are managed, and so on and so forth, the sort of behaviors and applications that are required to make a business successful. So if we had those kind of arrangements, perhaps we'd have a higher level of success. The other thing that you mentioned, which is very interesting, and it's something that in my extensive writing, I write a lot. I'm a blogger. I write on women and finance and mindsets and all the related issues. The one thing that I never thought of is the issue that you mentioned about the rule of law and where the performance, the trust levels, the risk-taking levels of women are enhanced where they know that, for example, there's a formal conflict resolution setup that exists. So having said that, maybe what I can add to my recommendation is that maybe the small claims court needs to be visible. It needs to be reviewed so that some of the problems we have heard from the lady here and other people that have visited the court, so that their experience is a little bit happier. It must be structured, it must be focused, it must be there to ensure that the problems of the small entrepreneurs are resolved quickly, because these are people who can't spend too much time away from the stand, you know? So the small claims court needs review and perhaps it needs revamp so that it becomes relevant to, to resolve the issues that these people are experiencing. So yes, it's true that the legal framework, like Dr. Chiselebwe has said, he doesn't want it to be too dominant. But at the back of my mind as an entrepreneur, I should be able to know that if there's a conflict here that we can't resolve as two people, we have recourse to this system. But that system must be credible, it must be quick, it must be cost effective, and it must be able to answer you know, to resolve some of these I'm choking.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get some reactions from the panel, please?
I'll start, and I'll just say that my thoughts are, it's not an either-or situation. I think we need all the things that we've talked about. We need the legal framework. We need the policies. We need finances, access to loans, and cultural context, the change of mindset, the rule of law. And at the end, I was going to add, we need to be ethical. Because I think one of my fears of even entering the space of an entrepreneur, even while I'm working, is the issue of corruption. If I have to get a bid somewhere, then I must pay somebody, and by the time you finish paying, you don't know what you remain with. So I still think that we need to reflect the ethical way in which we do business. And I also think that ethics, for me, must start in our homes, because the people who are stealing belong somewhere. And I still think it's an important issue. It's not just at an individual level, but if you talk to companies, I know a family business, they are turning pigs into pork, bacon, and things like that. At the time the pigs are ready, they just find numbers of them killed, because I understand if you carry them within a short period of time and remove the intestines, it should be okay to eat. I don't eat meat, so good luck to all of you. But what I'm saying is that for me, that destroys the entire economy of a country. So we need to change the way we do business, the way we view trust issues come in, because I was listening to World Vision the other day. They have a program where they're using social contract as a way of going to borrow money from Vision Fund. So they train the groups of women and men, its families, in actually building that social contract, that social trust. So for me, maybe I've heard a lot of talks around finances and how important it is, but maybe this was a breath of fresh air, a different view on how rule of law can actually assist. And around rule of law, I cannot move the ethical way in which, as Zambians, we need to reform the way we interact with each other. Thank you.
I think Dr. Ponga has summarized things very well. I think we need all the angles. And one point which Ms. Nkanza has brought in is the issue of skills. Sometimes when we talk about things the entrepreneurs need, number one is always finance, credit. We don't want to underestimate that. It's always very important. But sometimes we tend to neglect attention to basic management skills, business management skills, and I think as we look at these things, that should also be included.
I would comment on the small claims court and also on business management skills. As an association, I'm sure all of us are aware that in these markets, of course, a marketeer has no time to travel to go to a small claim court because you end up losing out business. But over the years, what has happened is that when you go to every market in the country, there's a leadership in place. This leadership has been helping our people when they have issues that they are not able to resolve, to sit them down and then agree with them how probably if somebody, mismanaged funds, especially on the Chilimba groups, because there are those marketeers that would get when it's their day to collect this money, they'll create a journey, you know. So now the other 10 or the other 20 members, you know, will stay without, you know, continuing with that kind of arrangement. So what we've done is that every marketeer has, for example, a stand, a shop, a store, or a depot numbered on them, and we are able to know where they're operating from, and when they group up, they know where they live. So these are some of the measures we've put in place. And if they misbehave, they're likely able to lose their shop or stand, or maybe a penalty of 6 months without operating in the market. So most of these marketeers are doing very fine in that area. So the second item is on business management skills. Right now, we have done a lot of partnerships with a number of institutions, like the Zambia Revenue Authority, where we've been appointed to collect base tax from the marketeers. We've also done, you know, partnerships with the Zambia Development Agency and NATSEV. Of course, with yes, I think every one of us is able to see what is putting on. Our role as an association is to ensure that we provide economical and social empowerment, basically to the marketeers, the traders, and the small-scale farmers. So now, we have designed a program with our partnership with the Zambia Development Agency, where we are saying that before someone is empowered, they need to undergo a skills, you know, training. Because for us, we believe that these are some of the challenges that our people have been facing, and most of our people have actually done well in their businesses. I'm sure in the near future, if there can be a situation like we bring over people, I mean the marketeers, especially ladies, you know, who have grown their businesses, we can be able to be brought and testify to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I get some reactions now from the... Oh, please go ahead.
Okay. In my other life, I do facilitate change processes in leadership and in individuals. Last week, we were facilitating, and I learned a new word from the people that we were connecting with from the US. And they were saying everyone, wherever they are seated, they are a leader at a different level, and everyone is a CEO. And this CEO means creator of economic opportunity. And when you're creating economic opportunity, you are bound to do so many things that somebody else who's not doing it will not, you know, be near you. And so we all make sure that all these issues that we're talking about, we are able to create opportunities to develop our economies. Then we're going to be good CEOs. Now, from the comments that came from the audience, one of them was information flow and sensitization. There is a lot of information out there, but what I have seen from where I'm sitting is we are operating in silos. We are operating in individuals, associations, and we're not talking to each other. And this is probably one of the issues that we can tackle when we are found in fora like this, where the people that are bringing people together, we can have a stakeholder engagement where all people that are, or all associations that are dealing with the same issues of empowerment, of making sure that information is taken forward, can come together and have this one group where all this information can be sourced. And this, I'm saying, if like in the ministry which is involved with gender, and in the ministry which is involved with economic empowerment, and this is the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, which has an arm that can actually do a database that can engage everyone that is around, and this is ZDA. ZDA has got capacity to do a database, but there's probably something wrong in the way that where policy is placed, which can turn out to be that one that we can easily use it. So information is there. It just depends on where you're seated and how you can find this information. The best place is ZDA. The best other place, because like Zaki, we work closely with ZDA and the ministry. We actually, on a daily basis, we're consulting. At Zaki, we've developed an entrepreneur toolkit for, it is from registration to governance and compliance. And this is a 6-module, which I think can really benefit, like your association, it can really benefit from there. It was helped, the research was done and helped by the Swedish Chamber of Commerce, and it's available at Zaki. To join Zaki or the Lusaka Chamber, Zaki is in all the provinces. Wherever people are creating economic opportunities, there is a chamber there, Lusaka Chamber. It's Humphrey who is at the Secretariat. For individual companies, Humphrey is on 097 89 0170. 0978 98 0170. That is for Lusaka Chamber. But if there are institutions and they want to partner with the chamber, they have to go to Zaki itself. The Secretariat is in the showgrounds, and the head there is Priska. And the number there is 252483 for people like that.
Thank you.
So that's what I had for you.
Thank you. Can I get some reactions? There's a hand here.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank this forum for giving us this opportunity where we can discuss our business challenges. First and foremost, mainly I would like to bring to your attention the legal framework, because without it, as a country, we are gone. I'm staying in Livala, South. I would like to refer to the first, my fellow colleague from the University of Zambia. Sorry, I forgot to, my name is Kasangula. Where Chinese are selling fritters, even up to now. Huh? So this is how low we have sunk as a country, which is very sad. If you go there, they are selling talk time, they are selling fritters, just mere fritters. So that is a very serious anomaly in the economy. Yes, we have political independence, but if we don't have our economy in our hands, then we are finished as a country. I've been fortunate to visit countries like Tanzania, where this embe drink that comes here is normally made by women in houses. I visited those houses in Tanzania, and they are taking that drink to the factories where they are finalized and made into drinks and exported as far as Congo. I've been to Congo myself, and I've seen these things going very far. Now, Zambia has more mangoes than Tanzania. Zambia has more mangoes. I think my doctor Ngandwe knows this fact when he was working for SIDO. So Zambians, as Zambians, we need protection in the way we conduct our business. They should be protected. This embe drink that people are drinking here is made very simple, just in houses. They've got machinery and what have you, and they're making these drinks and exporting them, earning a lot of foreign exchange if you went to the borders. So we need to do more, as my colleague said, from the University of Zambia, to protect Zambians. Because right now, even the Chinese have gone into car wash. They are washing cars in Lusaka. If you go to Ndola next to Levi Manawasa Stadium, there's a car wash for a Chinese there. So this is what we are talking about. Now, what is there for a Zambian? Because I've been to Botswana myself. You can't, not even a Baba. You can't operate business like that. So we need protection. And then secondly, I would like to address the question of Zanki. Yes, you've explained your role as well as the Marketeers Union, but you need to do more because bankers are normally capitalists in nature all over the world. They will never favor a Zambian. Never. It will never happen. They've got their own policies which are drawn by their boards of directors overseas and so forth. So their main interest is not to develop this country. This country will only be developed by us, as Zambians. So we need to do more in educating our people so that you find a solution whereby you can support them financially. As my colleague mentioned, in a way which is formal, not a chirimbayo, because there are certain risks. Someone who run away and then so that kind of stuff. So we need a formal arrangement where women can be empowered and us can be empowered in a formal manner so that can satisfy our country, because at least we can see our way forward. Then on the trust, at one time I had we are talking about, I'll refer to the permanent secretary here, ma'am. One time I won a tender by a very big company which was worth about 1.5 million. That time was 1.5 billion. But the employers, the same employers came to me. You know what? We are 6 on the panel. So so what it is you pay us 10 million each on the panel. So at no cash. So this is how far corruption has gone in, because it's being supported. So I don't know where we are going and where we shall end up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So there's a lady here and then the gentleman there. Yes. We'll come back to you, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Hope Chandamsonda. I belong to an organization called Women on a Mission. I'm also running an engineering consulting firm. Now, my question is directed to the Ministry of Gender. What is the Ministry of Gender doing in terms of supporting women in engineering, for example? Because as we have seen the statistics, women are in minority in business, women are in minority in land ownership, and for me it's worse because I'm also in a male-dominated environment. So I'm in a double, I don't know if it's triple disadvantage all around. But what we would like to see is where, for example, that in terms of high-value businesses which we are involved in, is there local partnership that will be promoted in terms of procurement, number one. Number two, is there support for women in engineering? Because as my colleague said in construction, when they see a woman, it's a totally different issue. But thank God for technology, because now at least we can communicate. For example, I know that Mrs. Beatrice Nkanza is doing a blog. Immediately I can check and I see, oh yeah, so it's mukoye.com. I can go there and I can check. That's an advantage for me, because now I'm using that to showcase what I am able to do and to give that information before anybody knows that I'm a woman. So that by the time they come and find out that I'm a woman, they would have already known my skill. But that is only to survive. What we would like to see is that women are more, it becomes more common for my daughter to see that a woman can be an engineer and can undertake a business contract that is on a national level, that is financed by World Bank. and stuff like that. Now, there's a lady here who explained the real situation. Because my fellow engineers are meeting up in bars. If I go there, I'm getting another name. If I buy a car, I'm getting another name. If I meet anybody, I'm getting another name. Why? Because it's not common. What is the Ministry of Gender trying to do? What is the Ministry of Gender doing to make women a common success factor?
Okay, thank you so much. I'll get one last question. Unfortunately, I have to close the questions because of time. We're supposed to vacate the room at midday. Sorry, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. My name is Geoffrey Sizala, a member of the EAZ, and also I work for Action Aid. I've seen we have diverted a little bit, but I just want us to come back. I think the topic of we are discussing today, women, institution, and also entrepreneurship. What can we do to level the playing field? Number one, I think Zambia is too patriarchal. I'm sure we have even evidence today that women, when they do something, we just want to demonize and stuff like that. It takes two to tango. I just wanted to respond to the point my colleague mentioned earlier on, and also to render apologies to the women. Secondly, I have another question directed to you, PS. You've talked about the need for us to have policy framework. I would love for you to highlight what has been some of the key success story with regards to the gender policy and also the Act on Equity. We should speak to these issues when you talk about, for example, leveling the playing field in the manufacturing sector. The other issue is directed to the researcher. I think I'm of the view that it would have been nice for you to segment, for example, to look at the rural women. What are some of the challenges? Issues to do with manufacturing. Is it a priority now? When most of the women, they are still struggling with access to capital. Then we jump to go to the manufacturing sector. So I think we needed to follow some sort of a sequence in terms of also the objective and also the geographical area. What were we trying to achieve? Maybe I came a bit late, my apology for that, but in terms of the objective for the research and also the geographical area, the sample size, for example. Okay, and those were some of the issues I would have loved for you also to highlight. I think also it was a bit general. You could have narrowed down maybe to the food sector, or maybe just get 2 or 3 areas you wanted to focus, for example, in the manufacturing sector. That could have helped us, to remain a bit focused. But all in all, also, PS, I would love to see that our trading policy, both internal and also external, maybe at the region, how are we faring, for example, as women, in terms of the trading? To what percentage are they contributing or be able to take the space at regional, maybe SADC level to trade? For example, when you go at a Kate's shopping mall, most women, they are subjected to sit outside when they are trading. So such kind of scenario really would love to see that at least the ministry is taking up such kind of challenges. Issues around transparency when tendering, I think that will help to address some of the gaps when it comes to gender issues. I thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm not taking any more questions or reactions, but I want to get quick reactions from the panel before we close. On the few reactions we've gotten from the guests.
Okay, there was the issue of procurement. Most of you know that we keep saying 30% minimum should go to women. We're just developing a tool with the help of African Development Bank to make sure that ZBPA adheres to that. Interestingly, one of the things that we have done in the ministry is even to write to ZBPA and ask, out of all the tenders that go through, how many of those are women-owned? The response is, we get profiles of the company and we don't go further to ask. So now that you have asked us, we will start. So you can see that working on gender can be very frustrating, because sometimes you take things for granted and you assume people are working on them. So I find that most of our role, unfortunately, is around coordinating as opposed to implementing. So when you're asking me what we can do about engineering, I'll have to work with another ministry for them to implement. And that can be very difficult. But I think we're working towards what we're calling a scorecard for each ministry to report on in terms of how they are achieving the 30 to 50% of making sure that procurement goes to women, or that when they're implementing. So for example, we sent out a request to the ministries, and we're asking them, what's the budget that's going towards gender mainstreaming? You know the responses I got? We have a budget for International Women's Day, and we have some for 16 days of activism, and I'm saying that's not gender mainstreaming. So what are you working with on a daily basis? And you have to sit down. Unfortunately, what is also happening is you train people, they move out, and you have to keep retraining. It's similar to what we're discussing here. Capacity building has to be continuous. And so in terms of the gender equity bill, there's supposed to have been a commission sitting that would then summon and subpoena everybody who's not. That has not been set up. But that doesn't mean that we are not working with the issues. I think that if I go into these details, we'll be deviating from what we've come here for. So I'm happy to have a one-on-one before I leave, or you're welcome to my office so that we could go into some of the details, and even in terms of the support that can go to women in engineering, because I think that's an important subject matter. But I just don't want to go into detail and start talking about the Ministry of Gender and our work. Let's concentrate for now on what brought us here. But I'm available. Yeah.
Any more reactions from here?
Thank you very much. In closing, I can say that my take from here is how we can collaborate and make sure that what we are bringing, out is inclusive of what everyone else is passionate about, or what anyone else wants to see being actioned. Because we talk a lot on a lot of issues which we already know the answers, so we should be able to start, we should be able to know where the mouth is and be able to chew and digest the things that we want to happen. Thank you.
So I guess also just in closing, 2 comments. One is utterly grateful for all of your input and feedback. I think in the next steps we're going to be focused a lot on small claims court, really understanding that legal framework, also just the legal institutions, the implementation, but also the legal framework. So I don't want to, I'm actually very interested in the answers on the Gender Equity Act, and really have a good sense of that, as well as pushing forward on understanding really the capital markets for women in particular here in Zambia, and the relationship between the capital markets and the intra-household dynamics, the family dynamics that come in, that affect both the business and the family. So that, please stay tuned. I think that's hopefully the next study, and we'll be very, very interested to then get your feedback there. We've really benefited from everything that people have shared. The last thing I want to say is to my sisters in engineering and in construction. As you might know, economics is also similar all over the world. It's a very, very male-dominated sector. In fact, it's so male-dominated, much, much more than the biological and chemical sciences. And it's been quite a difficult thing. It has not improved in gender equity over the last 30 years, believe it or not, in terms of gender representation. At all levels, PhD students, assistant professors, associate professors, and at my level, even at the senior full professors. And just to give you some confidence, when I started my PhD at Harvard, I was one of 3 women in a class of 30. And there were several men. We start, of course, with math classes, which were very hard. And there was, I remember several of the men had masters in math, and they told me, don't worry if you don't understand this. We know that women are worse at math. And so you know, this is a problem all over the world, obviously. And I think we just all, what I've been very heartened by in this room is how much all of us feel that we are in this together, you know, men and women. And just to share something that has always inspired me my whole life. It's a quote from, I love being in Zambia because faith is so important to you. And this is a quote from my faith, from the Baha'i faith, that men and women are like the two wings of a bird. If one wing is weak, the bird can't fly. And so both wings need to be strong, and then the bird of humanity can fly to prosperity. And I think that's much of what we've talked about here. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution.
Thank you very much. Just before I call for the final vote of thanks from ESZ and IGC, I just want to maybe pose some questions. Oh, please go ahead.
Yes, as Zanamaka, I think after this meeting we expect that we do a lot of partnerships with a number of players, especially in the informal sector, because the agenda is the same. Here we are talking about improving the businesses, especially for the women folk. And we have realized that there are a lot of gaps in terms of institutional isolation way of operation. Because we are driving the same agenda, why don't we work together? The other institution may have money. The other institution is on the ground, who understand what that woman is passing through. So if we work together, I think we'll be able to drive this economy, and our women, at the end of the day, will be doing good business. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any more comments from you? No? Okay, so after this study, after this report, the conclusions, where do we go next? What should we expect? What do the people who have attended this discussion take away from this report? Where are we going? So those are the questions that we should ask. I don't think this report should just end on PowerPoint. We should be able to see how we can move forward. How is the Ministry of Gender, maybe Ministry of Justice, trying to level up the playing field for women and men in terms of the rule of law? How should we move forward? So those are the questions that we should ask ourselves and see how we can participate and come together in ensuring that women entrepreneurs are able to conduct business just as well as the men entrepreneurs are conducting business. I think the issue of trust really does come in. How are we going to work with the let's say Law Association of Zambia, the courts, the Ministry of Justice, to ensure that women are protected, even men themselves. So we need to come up with maybe a further report so that we're able to implement whatever has been discussed here and not just leave everything in terms of a report, but also the implementation part moving forward. I'd like to call upon the ESZ representative to come and close, and as well as IGC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you very much for the panelists for that wonderful presentation. As a researcher, I know how difficult it is to go and collect data, especially in a setup like Zambia. So I think that is job well done. Thank you very much that government has come in to listen to this presentation, and I'm sure a lot of things are going to be picked up and implemented. And I'd like to thank academia, associations for coming together to discuss this very important topic. I think that's my concluding remarks. Since we are the ones that were holding this platform, I'd like to mention one thing. I think we have seen an increase in tendencies to, or a lot of talks around the Chinese. I think as a person, I've also done an article to look at the trends in the economy and the Chinese influence in the country. However, I would like to make it very clear that the Zambian laws are designed such that they do not discriminate, because we're in a global economy. And in protecting small businesses, we have all the laws and the regulations to be able to regulate citizens that are coming to do business, regardless of where we are coming from. For example, when you're looking at small businesses, for a foreigner to come into Zambia and to do business, you need to have an investor permit. For you to have an investor permit, you need to have a minimum amount of money. I think that right now it's about $500,000 US for you to start doing business. That is in the ZDA. So instead of trying to fight a race which is going to cause us problems on the international global market, you can't run away from the Chinese. Even if you hate them, you will never, because they own much of the US debt. When you're looking at the World Bank, they are one of the funders. You know, there's a meeting in Livingston under IDA, Industrial Development Association, and the World Bank. The Chinese government is one of the funders for money that is coming to a country like Zambia through the IMF. So we have to understand how interconnected we are. But we need to protect also women entrepreneurs, small businesses, so that foreigners do not take up the jobs that are supposed to be done by the locals. And there's a law to that effect. So if you see somebody of foreign origin selling on the market, you need to go to the authorities and say, there's a foreigner, can you find out what type of visa probably that person has, which gives them the right to remain in the Republic. So if they don't have an investor permit, or if they have an investor permit, are their investments worth $500,000? Those are the issues I think we should interrogate, but we should avoid, you know. I know there's a lot of resentment, but ladies and gentlemen, I've lived in another country for over 10 years, and I know how bad it is to be pinpointed at, and how certain countries that are very strict are normally are treated in other countries. It's a global world, but there are existing laws protecting small businesses. And as a country, those are the laws we should start interrogating. We should not become racial. We should be more objective, especially for me as Economic Association of Zambia president. I should be very careful, and economists should be very careful how we debate things. In protecting small businesses, we should look at the existing laws. You know, I cannot just go to the USA, for example, and start selling on the market. I need a status to remain in the USA. Which type of visa is that? If I'm an investor, there's a minimum amount of money I should go and invest. So those are the things that we should interrogate and not pinpointing. It's becoming very, very bad. You know what happens? When you speak ill, for example, of the Chinese, they are the Japanese, and they know they look similar to the Chinese. So they won't come in because they're afraid. Those are political risks. They're afraid of interferences from the other rest. I'm telling you the truth. I speak to holders. I think you had the chance. I'm concluding, and I'm just trying to. You know, when we talk to investors, yeah, that hold, for example, Zambian government assets, you'll be very shocked the source of their information. An investor is not in most cases, they are not very intelligent people. They are just you and me. They happen to have money, they happen to be risky, and they happen to look at developing markets. So when they are reading, they will basically read what is in our papers, what in our blogs, and everything. So we should be very, very careful about what we say about this country. I know she's saying, no, no, no. Madam, the past 3 weeks, no, she'll give you, the past 3 weeks, I just want to be very clear because, Madam, let me conclude.
Ma'am, please, can I ask you to sit down, please? Can you please sit down?
Yes. Madam, the last 3 weeks as an association, we have been meeting investors, Zambian investors. Some of them hold our Eurobonds. And as EZ, they met us as a stakeholder. What is happening in your country? And I'm telling you, the things that we have been saying, this is true, this is wrong, and we base things on the facts. So what I would just like to appeal, I'm not trying to, you know, Zambians have children that are studying on Chinese government scholarship. you should be also, you should know that there are those Zambians being paid for by the Chinese, and they live in China. So when you start certain actions, you should be, you are not an island. If your child or what is not in China, you should know that over 1,000 Zambian young men and women are in China. Those implications are very important. You know, it just looks so simple like this. Immediately you close the border, you are going to understand how much countries need to integrate and protect. Then in the conclusion, in my conclusion, there was a comment that was passed, and I basically, since this is our platform.
Please, can we just give him a chance to close? This is his closing remarks. We are here because of EAZ, please. Thank you. I'd request if we could just keep quiet. Thank you.
So we have to be very careful in what we do. We have been doing a lot of, because of speculation, a lot of firefighting to ensure that even the Zambian kwacha remain that stable. I'm telling you, we speak to a lot of people day in, day out. Even the comment that was made about women going out, I even became scared that said, I can't send my wife to Dubai anymore. But it's such comments, even when we are discussing such an issue, but we say, no, women, they'll go and misbehave, but they are with the men. So in what we say, we should be looking at things more objective and in an integrated approach. I think if we need our women to be empowered, if we need our country to move forward, I think there's a certain way we should start looking at issues. I know a lot of people, some of the people are upset, some of people agree with what I'm saying, but posterity is going to judge us. Thank you very much.
Please, can I request Mr. Chiwele to come and close? Dr. Chiwele.
Can you please take us away?
Thank you very much. I think gratitudes have already been accorded to a very powerful panel. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, Professor Ashraf, and Dr. Ponga, and the rest of the panel for doing a very good job. The moderator, she's been very flexible. She has allowed a free flow of discussion. I do moderate sometimes. If I was the one moderating, we're not going to go beyond 2 minutes, each one of us. But I learned something from her. She allowed us to speak, and in speaking, we managed to get some very useful insights and contributions to the topic today. I would like to pick up things in closing to try and answer the questions that the moderator posed. Where do we go from here? And I'm obviously speaking on behalf of the International Growth Center. Where do we go from here? We have had a very good presentation, wonderful insights, but as Professor Ashraf has indicated, this is an ongoing study. We're going to keep unraveling the issues around this topic. And for the International Growth Center, to begin with, we believe we have a very big resource just now. And this is the data in itself. This topic was on women, institutions, and entrepreneurship. But there is more, obviously, that can be answered from the data that we have. We obviously encourage our researchers to do a lot more, to mine the data and give us some answers around entrepreneurship, certainly, but other things as well. The presentation today has put on the table one issue, which I think we need to interrogate quite a lot. And this is the issue of trust in the economy. We heard this morning that trust acts as a lubricant to economic growth. And intuitively, we agree with that. It makes a lot of sense to collaborate, to do business together. There should be some level of trust. I think we've just discussed a lot of things. For me, and having been taught by Dr. Ngandwe, I don't think this issue of trust has come out. I don't think we have interrogated it enough. We need to look at it much more. So thank you very much. I think Professor Ashraf for offering to take this a little further. Of course, other things, finance is important. Let's continue looking at it. Other novel aspects, very, very important. Cultural context, we heard about issues of culture. How can we deal with that? First, let's understand how culture influences the way we do business, how culture influences the participation of women in the marketplace. Issues of mindset change. If we're going to accept these things, how are we going to bring about the mindset change? And I'm very happy that Dr. Ponga is here, because that word, that term is in the 7th National Development Plan because of her. And she is the best advocate of this, but we still haven't understood. Firstly, what's our mindset? And secondly, how do we bring about a mindset change that should follow? So for the International Growth Center, going forward, we'll be interacting with the researchers, recruiting more researchers in this space. We'll be interacting, obviously, with government to see whether we are answering the right questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like, first and foremost, to invite you to join me to congratulate and thank Professor Ashraf and the rest of the panelists. Thank you very much. To thank the moderator as well, an entrepreneur. Very good moderator. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to everyone who has come this morning and every contribution that has been made. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much all for coming. We can now mingle and as we leave. Thank you very much. Have a good day.